The signal no one could ignore. The night was quiet in the deep space listening post on Luna Base. Lieutenant Sarah Vance sat alone in the control room, sipping cold coffee and staring at the endless stars on her monitor. It had been another long shift with nothing unusual to report. Then, a sudden sharp sound broke the silence. The monitor flashed red, showing a signal detected far beyond human borders. It was not just static, it was a voice that carried pain, fear, and desperation. Sarah turned up the volume. Her heart raced as she heard words in a strange, alien tongue. She could not understand them, but she could feel the meaning. It was a cry for help. The transmission repeated over and over, the voice growing weaker each time. She quickly recorded it and sent it to Central Command. Her hands trembled. She knew this was no ordinary call. Hours later, in the great chamber of the United Terran Council, the signal played again. Admirals, scientists, and leaders from across Earth sat in silence. When the recording ended, the room was heavy with tension. "They are far outside our sector," one council member said. "This is not our fight." Another shook his head. "It could be a trap to lure us into unknown space." But then Admiral Marcus Holt spoke. He was a man with a deep voice and eyes that had seen too many wars. "We are human," he said. "When someone calls for help, we answer." There was a murmur in the chamber. Some argued, some warned of danger. But deep inside, they knew Admiral Holt was right. Humanity had once been alone and desperate, and they remembered what it felt like when no one came to help. In the corner of the room, Captain Adrian Kane stood quietly. He was known for volunteering for missions others refused. When Holt finished speaking, Kane stepped forward. "I will go," he said without hesitation. "I will take the Resolute and find whoever sent this call." The room went silent. Holt studied him for a moment and then nodded. "Very well," he said. "You leave at dawn." By morning, the Resolute was ready. The crew moved with purpose, loading supplies, checking weapons, and preparing the ship for a long journey. The cry for help continued to play on the ships. Intercom, reminding everyone why they were going. Engineer Myra Chun adjusted the power systems while joking with the gunnery chief. But her eyes were serious. They all knew this mission could end badly. Kane walked the bridge, his eyes scanning the crew. "Set coordinates for the signal source," he ordered. The navigation officer tapped the controls, and the star map lit up, showing a path deep into uncharted space. The ship's AI voice spoke calmly. "Warning, destination is outside safe travel zones." Kane ignored it. "Engage warp," he said. The Resolute jumped into the void. Stars blurred into streaks of light. Inside the ship, the crew felt the quiet weight of the unknown pressing on them. In the mess hall, some tried to joke to hide their nerves. Others stared at the floor, lost in thought. Kane stayed on the bridge, watching the endless black ahead. He thought of the voice in the signal. Who were they? Were they still alive? Would he be too late? Days passed in the cold stretch of space. The signal grew stronger the closer they got. But so did something else. Faint energy readings, like shadows moving in the dark. On the fourth day, the sensors picked up massive amounts of wreckage. Shattered hulls drifted silently, torn apart by weapons fire. Some still burned, their metal glowing faint red in the cold vacuum. The crew stared at the wreckage in shock. "This wasn't a battle," Mira whispered. "This was a slaughter." Kane ordered the ship to slow. They scanned for life signs. The computer found faint readings on a nearby moon. The signal was coming from there. "Prepare landing," Kane said. But just as the Resolute adjusted course, the ship's eye spoke again. "Captain, detecting unidentified warship signature hidden among debris." The bridge crew froze. The unknown ship was not broadcasting any signal. It was just watching silent. Kane narrowed his eyes. "Stay on course," he said. "If they want us, they'll have to come and get us." The Resolute descended toward the moon. The crew could see a ruined city below, smoke still rising from broken towers. The cry for help echoed in their ears. Whatever waited down there, Kane knew one thing. They were already part of it now, and there was no turning back. Shadows. At the edge of the galaxy, the Resolute glided into the edge of the dying star system. The star ahead was pale and weak, its light dimming like an old candle in the dark. Around it drifted broken ships, twisted into shapes that no shipyard would have ever built. Some were so torn apart that their insides floated free, chairs, tools, even frozen bodies caught in the silent dance of space. Captain Kane stood on the bridge, his arms crossed as he studied the wreckage. Every piece told the same story. Overwhelming force. No mercy, no survivors. The crew kept their voices low, as if afraid the dead could still hear them. The signal was louder here, almost painful through the comms. It was no longer just a voice. There were background sounds, the hum of machinery, and something else, a faint rhythmic thud like a heartbeat. Source is on the third moon. The navigation officer reported. Atmosphere thin but breathable, surface temperature cold. Kane nodded. Take us in slowly. The Resolute began its approach, weaving carefully through the drifting debris. From the windows, the moon looked gray and lifeless, but the scanners showed faint life signs, clustered near what seemed to be a ruined city. Then the ship's AI broke the quiet. Captain, we are not alone. Kane turned sharply. Explain. A holoscreen lit up, showing a faint red blip. Unknown warship, mass larger than the Resolute, hidden among wreckage at bearing 092. The AI said. No signal, no ID, no movement. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. Whoever they were, they had been here long before the Resolute arrived. Do they know we've seen them? Mira Chun asked from engineering. Probably, Kane replied. But they're waiting. For what? Either for us to land, Kane said, or for us to run. The moon grew larger in the forward view. Craters scarred its surface, and the city ruins lay in shadow. The buildings were tall but broken, some leaning like they might collapse at any second. Set us down near those life signs, Kane ordered. Keep the weapons ready, but don't fire unless I say. The Resolute descended, its landing struts touching the dusty ground with a low thud. The air outside was still. The only movement was a faint swirl of dust stirred by the ship's thrusters. Kane and his landing team suited up, helmets locking with a hiss. Each carried a rifle, though they hoped they wouldn't need it. As the ramp lowered, cold air rushed in. The team stepped onto the surface, boots crunching on shattered glass and stone. In the distance, a thin figure appeared, stumbling toward them. It was humanoid, but its skin was pale blue, and its eyes glowed faint gold even in the dim light. The alien fell to its knees in front of Kane. Speaking in a broken, trembling voice, the translator crackled to life. Please, help us. They are still here. Kane knelt, his voice calm. Who? The alien's eyes widened in fear. The Dravik, before Kane could ask more. The alien looked to the sky. The team followed its gaze up above, between the stars, faint. Lights began to move. The unknown warship was no longer alone. 3 more shapes slid out from behind the wreckage, their hulls jagged and black. On the Resolute's bridge, alarms blared. Incoming ships, matching energy signature to unknown contact. The AI announced, they are moving into attack position. The comms crackled with a harsh voice, speaking Galactic common. Humans, it growled. You have something. That belongs to us. Kane's voice was steady. These people don't belong to anyone. The voice laughed, cold and mocking. And you will die with them. The landing team hurried back up the ramp with the alien survivors they had found. The Resolute's engines roared to life, lifting from the moon's surface. In orbit, the black warships spread out like hunters surrounding prey. Kane knew. They were faster and heavier armed, But he also knew humans never fought by the rules of others. "Battle stations," he ordered. The bridge crew's hands moved over controls with precision born from years of drills. On the forward screen, the Dravik ships loomed closer, weapons glowing like the eyes of predators in the dark. The Resolute's gunners locked targets, waiting for the order. Kane didn't give it yet. He wanted the Dravik to think humans were. Afraid, the Dravik leader spoke again. "You have one chance. Give them to us, and we will let you live." Kane's lips curled into a faint smile. "Not going to happen," he said. The comms went silent. Then the first shot lit up the void. Asterisk. The last survivors, the first blast, missed the Resolute by only meters. The shockwave rattled the hull, making every panel vibrate. Inside, the crew moved with sharp focus, their fear hidden under layers of discipline. Kane gripped the arm of his captain's chair, eyes locked on the tactical display. "Evasive maneuvers," he ordered. The Resolute twisted and rolled in the darkness, dodging a second beam of crackling energy. Through the forward viewport, the Dravik warships circled like predators, their jagged silhouettes blotting out the dying star's weak light. In the cargo bay, the rescued alien, the blue-skinned, one with golden eyes, clung to the railing. Others had joined them now, brought in by search teams from the moon's surface. They were thin, their skin marked with bruises and strange burns. They huddled together, watching the humans work. One of them stepped forward, her voice trembling as she spoke to the translator device. "You should not have come," she said. "The Dravik will never stop." Kane arrived, pulling off his helmet. "They sent a distress call," he said simply. "We answered." The alien's eyes widened, as if she had never expected such words. "No one else came," she whispered. "We sent the signal to every known empire. They all ignored it." Her words sank deep into Kane's mind. He had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed stirred something dangerous in him. Rage, the Varelians, as they called themselves, had once been a thriving people, their cities shining with crystal towers and flowing gardens. But weeks ago, the Dravik descended without warning. They took resources, destroyed ships, and slaughtered anyone who resisted. The survivors were used as bait, their signal a lure to bring in more victims. "Captain," Myra's voice came over the comm, "we've got more than 24 life signs left on the surface, but the Dravik ships are blocking our landing path." Kane didn't hesitate. "Get me a firing solution," he said. "We clear a path. We bring them up, back on the bridge." The gunnery chief locked on to the nearest Dravik frigate. The Resolute's forward cannons roared, the recoil shuddering through the decks. The energy blasts ripped into the enemy's armor, peeling away black plates like brittle stone. The Dravik ship spun away, venting fire and gas into the void. "That's one," the gunnery chief said. But there were still 2 more closing fast, their weapons glowing hotter. Mira pushed the engines past safe limits, the ship's hum turning. Into a strained growl, the Resolute darted between drifting wreckage, using the debris as cover. From the viewport, Kane saw flashes of the ruined moon below, the crumbled buildings, the dark streets, the faint heat signatures of survivors hiding wherever they could. "Prepare drop pods," Kane ordered. It was risky. The pods were small and vulnerable, but they could land faster than the Resolute and lift survivors before the Dravik could destroy them. 3 pods shot from the underside of the ship, streaking toward the surface like falling stars. The Dravik fired, but only 1 pod took a glancing hit, spinning but still landing. Inside, human Marines rushed out, weapons ready, voices calm despite the chaos. They found the survivors, young, old, injured, and led them toward the pods. Under the cover of heavy rifles, on the Resolute, Kane's jaw tightened as the Dravik flagship appeared from behind the moon. It was massive, its hull studded with weapon ports. The comms flared with the same harsh voice as before. "Human, you fight well for prey, but this ends now?" Kane smiled without humor. "We'll see about that," he said minutes later. The pods blasted back into space, carrying the last Virelian survivors. The Resolute caught them in its docking clamps and pulled them aboard. Kane didn't wait. All power to forward shields and get us some distance. The Dravik flagship opened fire, the blasts hammering against the shields. Alarms wailed. Sparks flew across the bridge. But the Resolute held together. In the cargo bay, the Virelians watched in stunned silence as humans fought not for conquest, not for gain, but simply because someone needed saving. Kane glanced once at the alien leader, the woman with golden eyes. "We're not leaving you here," he said. Her lips trembled. "No one has ever said that to us before." The Resolute spun away from the battle for a moment, building speed, but Kane's mind was already made up. They would come back, not alone next time. Earth needed to see what he had seen, and the Dravik needed to learn what it meant when. Humanity answered a call for help. The enemy appears. The void between the stars seemed to grow darker as the Dravik flagship closed in. Its hull was a jagged fortress of black metal, bristling with cannons that glowed a deep, hungry red. Smaller escort ships flanked it like wolves guarding their alpha. On the Resolute's bridge, the crew could feel the pressure of its presence, as if the very space around them had turned hostile. Range to target, 5,000 kilometers and closing fast, the navigation officer reported. Multiple weapons charging, added the gunnery chief, his voice tight. Kane leaned forward in his chair, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "They want to scare us," he said. "Let them try." The comms came alive with the guttural growl of the Dravik commander. "Human ship, you are outnumbered, outgunned, and far from your nest," the voice snarled. "You will hand over the Virelian cattle, or we will tear your vessel apart, piece by piece." Kane's reply was calm, his words measured like a blade drawn slow. "Come and take them." A cold silence followed. Then the Dravik flagship fired its first volley. Beams of searing energy tore through the darkness, slamming against the Resolute's shields. The deck shuddered under the impact, consoles flickering. As power surged through the systems, shields holding, but barely, Mira called from engineering. "Divert all non-essential power to reinforcement," Kane ordered. The lights dimmed across the ship as energy rerouted to the shields. Kane wasn't thinking about running. He was thinking about how to hit back. The Resolute dove sharply, skimming the surface of the ruined moon. Dust and debris rose in great clouds as the ship's thrusters burned hot. The Dravik escorts followed, their weapons firing in relentless bursts, but the Resolute was smaller, faster, and unafraid to scrape through narrow gaps in shattered terrain. "Target their escorts," Kane ordered. The gunnery chief grinned. The Resolute's cannons barked fire. Striking one Dravik ship mid-hull, the blast tore through it, sending fragments spiraling into the void. The second escort tried to flank, but Kane cut power suddenly, letting the larger ship overshoot. One well-placed shot from the Resolute's railguns split it in half. 2 down, the gunnery chief reported, but the flagship was still there, bigger and deadlier than anything they'd faced yet. In the cargo bay, the Virelian survivors huddled close. The golden-eyed leader looked at Kane's image on a nearby monitor. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why do they fight for us?" An older Virelian beside her shook his head. "Because they are human." Back on the bridge, the Dravik commander's voice returned. "You think saving these insects will mean anything?" "We will burn your homeworld the way we burned theirs." Kane's eyes narrowed. "That's the last threat you get to make," he said. "Myra, prepare the gravlance." There was a pause. "Captain, that's still experimental," she warned. "Then it's the perfect time to test it," Kane replied. The Resolute pulled up hard, breaking from the moon's surface and pointing its nose directly at the flagship. The Dravik ship's weapons lit up, charging for a killing blow. "Fire," Kane ordered. The gravlance roared to life. A beam of compressed gravitational energy shot forward, not tearing through armor, but bending it inward. The flagship's hull screamed under the pressure, metal plates warping and cracking. Alarms wailed on the enemy vessel as systems failed in a chain reaction. Direct hit. Their main batteries are offline, the gunnery chief shouted. Kane didn't waste the moment. All weapons fire at will. The Resolute's cannons unleashed a storm, ripping into the flagship's wounded frame. Explosions burst along its length, tearing it apart section by section. The great vessel groaned like a dying beast, then split in two, drifting lifeless. In the cold void, silence fell over the comms. The surviving Dravik ships turned away, retreating into the dark. Kane leaned back in his chair, his voice steady. Status? Shields at 30%. Hull intact, Mira reported. We can still fly. In the cargo bay, the Varelian leader stared at the floor, tears in her golden eyes. You fought them. And you won, she said, her voice trembling. Kane looked at her through the internal monitor. No, he said quietly. We survived. The real fight hasn't started yet. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, because they all knew he was right. If the Dravik had a fleet big enough to destroy the Virelians, this was only the beginning, and Kane had just made sure humanity was now on their list. Asterisk. Fire in the void. The wreckage of the Dravik flagship still burned silently in space. Its shattered remains drifted like the bones of some great beast. But Captain Kane knew this was not victory. It was the signal for a greater storm. Multiple. Warp signatures incoming, the navigation officer warned. Kane's eyes narrowed at the holodisplay. 1, 2. Then 6 new red markers appeared. Dravik reinforcements, larger than before. They had come fast, too fast. It meant they were already close when the battle began. The Dravik had been watching, waiting for the Resolute to bleed. Raise. Shields, weapons hot, Kane ordered. Myra's voice came from engineering, tense and sharp. Captain, we can't take on 6 ships in our current condition. We're not here to win, Kane replied. We're here to buy time. The Varelian survivors in the cargo bay could feel the ship shift as it changed course. Some clung to railings, others huddled near heating units to fight the chill. Of space, the golden-eyed leader watched the floor screens, where crew positions glowed like constellations. She didn't understand human strategy, but she understood courage, and the humans had it in abundance. The Resolute darted toward a dense field of debris left from the earlier battle. The twisted hulls and drifting panels provided cover. Dravik. Ships followed, firing beams that sliced through metal carcasses. The void lit up in flashes of blue and red, as explosions echoed silently across the darkness. Gunnery. Take out their eyes, Kane said. The gunnery chief understood. He targeted the lead Dravik sensor array, firing a precision shot from the railguns. The impact shattered the sensor cluster, leaving the ship blind and forcing it to slow. That's one crippled, he said with a grin, but the others closed in. A volley of plasma slammed into the Resolute's port side. The deck lurched, alarms wailed, and sparks rained down from an overloaded console. Shields at 20%, Mira called. Keep them together, Kane ordered. We just need a little more time. The comms crackled with a voice from Earth Command. Resolute, this is Fleet Command. We've received your distress burst. Reinforcements are en route. Kane didn't look away from the screen. How far? 22 minutes, came the reply. 22 minutes in the middle of 6 Dravik warships felt like an eternity. Kane decided to gamble. Prepare the grav lance again, he said. Mira hesitated. It overheated last time. It could. Do it, Kane cut her off. The Resolute swung hard, facing the nearest Dravik cruiser head-on. The enemy's weapons glowed as they prepared to fire. Now, Kane ordered. The grav lance fired. The beam slammed into the cruiser's bow, bending armor inward like it was made of cloth. The enemy ship's forward guns shattered. its own power core destabilizing. It exploded in a burst of fire and molten debris. The shockwave rattled even the Resolute's reinforced hull. The crew barely had time to cheer before another enemy's plasma beam cut across their shields. Shields failing. Myra yelled, "Rotate and keep the good side toward them." Kane ordered. The Resolute rolled, using wreckage as a barrier while gunners fired in short. Brutal bursts. Minutes dragged like hours. Hull breaches were patched with emergency fields. Heat warnings screamed from the engines, but the Resolute refused to die then. Just as the Dravik ships began to surround them, the void rippled. 100 blue-white flashes tore open the darkness. Human warships emerged, their hulls gleaming with the light of 100 suns. The comms filled with the firm voice of Admiral Holt. "Resolute, this is the United Terran Fleet. You're not alone anymore." The human fleet moved like a single living thing. Missiles, beams, and kinetic rounds turned the void into a storm of destruction. Dravik ships burned and broke under the relentless fire. One by one, they fell back, retreating into the black on the Resolute. The crew let out the breath they had been holding for what felt like days. Kane stood, looking at the screen where the Varelians watched the battle in awe. "You're safe now," he told them. The golden-eyed leader shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "We are safe because you came." Kane didn't answer, because in his mind, he knew this was only the beginning. The Dravik would remember this day, and so would the rest of the galaxy. Earth answers. The Dravik retreat was not silence. It was a growl in the dark, a warning that they would return. But this time, Earth was ready to answer in full. The Resolute moved into formation with the United Terran Fleet. Dozens of warships spread across the void like an iron wall. Their hulls gleamed with the reflection of a pale sun. Every gun, every missile bay, every shield generator was powered to maximum. The galaxy had seen human fleets before, but not like this. This was not a patrol, not a diplomatic escort. This was war on the Resolute's bridge. Kane stood beside Admiral Holt, who had transferred over for the final push. The Varelian leader stood with them, her golden eyes watching the tactical display with quiet awe. "This," Holt said to her, "is what happens when you hurt those under our protection." Sensors lit up with red markers. The Dravik were coming back, and they were not holding back. 20 ships emerged from warp, each as large as a city. Their black hulls bristled with weaponry, their formations tight and ruthless. They moved like predators that had hunted together for centuries. "Fleet, hold position." Holt ordered. The humans waited as the Dravik closed in. No one fired, no one moved. Kane could feel the tension in the air. It was the same feeling before a storm breaks. The Dravik commander's voice boomed across the comms. "You are far from home. Humans, leave now, and we will spare your colony worlds." Holt leaned toward the console, his voice calm but sharp. "You came into our space first. You slaughtered civilians and called them prey. Now you face the consequence." The Dravik did not respond. Instead, their front line accelerated. Weapons charging, Holt raised one hand. All ships fire. The void exploded into light. Beams of pure energy cut through the darkness. Missiles streaked between ships, leaving trails of fire before slamming into enemy hulls. Railguns fired at near-light speed, tearing through armor in bursts of molten metal. The Dravik answered with their own storm. Thick plasma bolts, gravity warheads, shredding kinetic rounds. The Resolute moved with precision, weaving through the chaos. Kane called out targets, gunners answering with deadly accuracy. One Dravik destroyer caught a full salvo from the Resolute's forward cannons. Splitting apart in a shower of sparks, another tried to flank, but was met with a wall of human missiles, detonating in a chain reaction that took 2 more ships with it. In the middle of the battle, a massive Dravik dreadnought pushed forward. Its armor was nearly impenetrable. It cut through human lines, guns blazing, Holt's voice cut through the noise. Kane, Gravlance now. The Resolute swung around, its nose locking onto the dreadnought. Myra's voice came through. Overheating. Risk is critical. Kane's reply was simple. Do it, the Gravlance fired. The beam bent the dreadnought's hull inward, crushing its main reactor. The explosion lit the void brighter than the dying star itself. For a moment, even then, Dravik seemed stunned, but humanity did not give them time to recover. The fleet advanced, pressing every advantage. Ship after ship fell under the coordinated strikes. Within minutes, the Dravik formation began to fracture. And then, like predators realizing the prey had teeth, they turned and fled, silence slowly. Returned to the comms. The debris of the battle drifted between the ships. The Varelian leader turned to Kane. You came with your entire fleet, she said softly. No one has ever done that for us. Kane met her gaze. Now the whole galaxy knows, he said. Admiral Holt gave the order to secure the system. Rescue ships moved in to help the remaining. Varelians, medical crews poured from the bays, carrying supplies and hope. The war wasn't over, but today, Earth had made its answer clear. The message was simple. If you send a cry for help, and humans hear it, you are not alone, asterisk. The promise beyond stars. The battlefield was quiet now. Wreckage floated in slow motion, lit by the pale glow of the dying star. The Dravik were gone. For now, the United Terran fleet held its position like guardians carved from steel. On the own. Resolute, the crew moved through the halls, helping the injured, securing systems, and preparing for the long trip home. In the cargo bay, the Virelian survivors stood in small groups, still trying to understand what had happened. They had expected rescue to be a dream, something they would never live to see. Instead, they had been saved by strangers who crossed light years just to answer a cry for help. The golden-eyed leader approached Kane. Her steps were slow, not from fear, but from the weight of everything she had lost. You fought for us when no one else would, she said, her voice soft but steady. You did not know our names. You did not owe us anything. But you came. Kane shook his head. We didn't come because of who you are. He said, we came because of who we are. The words seemed to settle into her like sunlight, breaking through cold clouds. For the first time since the attack began, she allowed herself to smile. On the bridge, Admiral Holt prepared a final transmission. It would be sent across every known communication channel in the galaxy. He stood straight, his uniform marked with the dust of battle. This is the United Terran Fleet, he began. Let it be known, when a cry for help crosses the stars, humanity will answer. We do not ask for payment. We do not ask for territory. We fight because someone must. And we will never turn away from those in need. The message would echo far beyond this star system. In the days to come, it would be replayed in alien marketplaces, council halls, and military command rooms. Some would see it as hope. Others would see it as a warning. The Dravik would see it as a challenge they could not ignore. The Varelians boarded medical ships that would take them to safety. Some looked back at the Resolute, as if afraid it might vanish like a dream. Kane watched them go, feeling a strange mix of relief and resolve. The mission was over, but the war was not. He knew the Dravik would return, and when they did, they would not come quietly later. As the Resolute turned for home, the crew gathered in the observation deck, through the massive windows. The stars stretched endlessly. No one spoke for a long time, and Mira broke the silence. Do you think they'll ever understand why we did it? Kane thought for a moment. Maybe not, he said, but they'll remember we did. Far from the dying star, in the deep black between galaxies, Dravik warlords spoke in shadowed chambers. Their pride was wounded, their plans disrupted, and the named humanity was now marked on their lists of enemies. They would come again, but this time, the galaxy would know that if the Dravik attacked, humans would stand in the way. The Resolute's engines burned bright as it slipped into warp. Behind it, the ruins of the Varelian homeworld slowly disappeared from sight. Ahead, the promise of 1,000 more stars awaited. And somewhere out there, other cries for help were waiting to be heard. Kane stood alone for a moment, watching the starfield blur. He thought of the golden-eyed leader, of her people, and of the words she had spoken. You came because of who? You are. Yes, he thought, and as long as humanity kept answering, the galaxy would never truly be silent. The mission log closed with a single line. We heard the call, we answered. We will always answer, **.